This time, Gianluca Vialli puts Chelsea back on the map.
No, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. Because I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible to once and for all try and work out the impossible task of who is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn, making the case, whether it belongs there or not, for Oxford United. And joining me as ever is our king of the day, Sir Jamie Rooney.
Good afternoon, Graham. And here we are with a glamour club, a real glamour club. Before, no one really liked him when Abramovich came along. We're going to talk about sexy Chelsea from the swinging 60s, not the QPR from the 70s. It's quite exciting, this Chelsea team. This is when you can rely on Chelsea actually getting relegated every once in a while.
Absolutely. And in customary style, we're choosing a Chelsea who aren't the greatest Chelsea. So we are sort of, as has become a tradition, we're sort of avoiding the title winners there and going for a stylish Chelsea for sure. And delighted to be joined this time by Lyndon Baldock. Hi, Lyndon. How are you doing?
You all right?
Good. Lyndon, you are a Chelsea fan?
Yeah, lifelong Chelsea fan since the late 70s.
Jamie, you kind of alluded to this in the opening. It's difficult to remember. There was this period of Chelsea, the starts, and probably when you started following Chelsea, the same as when I first saw them. That wasn't a great era, was it? That was kind of a John Bumstead, Mike Fillery kind of period of Chelsea.
From when I was about 5 to 15, I think we had maybe 2 or 3 seasons in the First Division. So I think it's something like that. There's something like, out of 10 seasons, 8 of them were in the Second Division, something like that. So yeah, it was a kind of a schoolyard question mark. Why on earth do you support Chelsea?
You know how some things kind of stay with you, and especially when you're a kid, you kind of maybe things seem worse than they were. But I think there was Jeff Hurst was manager of Chelsea at some stage, and didn't he? They go on a run and not scoring for about a century.
A century.
I knew you were going to do this, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I even as I'm saying it, I don't actually remember Jeff Hurst being their manager, but I'm sure.
No. I mean, I remember a number of ex-players being managers. John Hollins and John Newman, lots of but no, I don't actually remember Jeff Hurst. I'm sure you're right.
I'm questioning myself now. He was manager of Chelsea. Yeah, there you go, manager of Chelsea, and
when was that?
79 maybe. So according, this is my deep research on Wikipedia. The Blues began their early promotion pace setters. This is they're in the second tier before a dismal run set in. Just the final 23 league games. So, what an era that was for Chelsea.
It is true, though, because I do remember when I growing up in the 1980s, getting the Panini sticker albums, which were fantastic. And Chelsea, and it was back in the day where the Panini sticker albums used to do a very small page of the Division 2 team. So you didn't get the individual player cards, but you got the team and the glossy, shiny badge. And yeah, I always remember Chelsea being in the second tier. It was, when they did get promoted into the top tier, it was almost like a surprise. I grew up knowing Chelsea as a glamour club, but not really understanding why, because other than the FA Cup and a league championship in the 50s and 70s, I think they hadn't really had a great deal of success, Lyndon. Is that fair?
No,
or is my Manchester United bias coming through already?
No. The thing is, it was because we were recently a glamour club. And it had just stuck, So the kind of the 60s and the early 70s, which is sort of before all of our times, right? So I was born in the year that we'd won the FA Cup, right? So just after that, and so I'm one when we win the European Cup Winners' Cup, for example. And so as a kid, I was given a shirt by a neighbour, a Chelsea shirt by a neighbour, and I followed his team. Basically, in my household, it was you had to support, because we weren't living in London anymore. We moved to Essex when I was about 2. And but because all my family were in London, as long as and everyone around that area supported a London club, that was a thing. I mean, you couldn't support Manchester United or Liverpool, but as long as it was a London club, because none of us were in London, it had to be like the nearest set of clubs. And so there was Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham, QPR, of course, and one Chelsea fan, which was my neighbour. And so I didn't want to support anyone that my family supported. That was split between West Ham and Tottenham. And so I went with the neighbour that used to take me down the park and play football. He gave me an old top of his. That was it. So, you were stuck with Chelsea. And you have no idea. I didn't have any idea how good or bad the team was. But in recent times, I knew that we'd won the FA Cup and we'd won things. So I think that's where the glamour stuff comes from, the 60s and 70s, the King's Road and Peter Osgood and Charlie Cook. And it was all about lifestyle. And of course, famously, Ken Bates, when he has said over the years, what he inherited was an academy full of players, because it was 1982 that he bought us for £1, right? And he'd inherited an academy full of players that had grown up with that whole lifestyle of Chelsea, which was drinking, King's Road. But of course, so they had the lifestyle, but without any of the skill of those players.
Yeah, Ken Bates is sort of absolutely central to this kind of period, isn't it?
I've given you a segue.
It's very good. It's very good. He's definitely one of those kind of larger than life chairmen, which maybe, Oxford obviously had it with Robert Maxwell in the 80s, but I think there was probably a thing. Maybe that was an 80s thing where the chairman had slightly bigger profiles.
Well, he was fresh to us. I don't think anyone knew who Ken Bates was until then, right? So he was kind of a businessman. I think he had a dairy farm somewhere, and which is where the old electric fences came from, and which of course he wasn't allowed to turn on. And I think it's the Mears family, isn't it? That and it's owned for sort of 70 odd years, but the kids, or the grandchildren rather, had completely run it into the ground, and they're sort of like bouncing checks at the same time as they're all kind of like lording it up in the director's box, with champagne and oysters and bouncing checks, and with a chauffeur. And things like that, and it can't pay the players. It was that bad when Ken Bates takes over. He was offered this by, I think he was an accountant, and he'd done this before. He'd taken over accountant, and this accountant says to him, "How do you feel about a football club? I've got this one that's going down the Swanee, and it does need 300 grand paying within 7 days." There's $1.5 million of debts or something, so bought it for about. But yeah, he was definitely larger than life. But and no one saw where he'd come from or knew anything about him.
He'd had a brief spell. I don't know if you're aware of this, Lindy. He had a brief spell in football prior to this. He'd kind of had a spell at Oldham and Wigan Athletic, so in the northwest. So he had been dabbling in lower league football before he got his opportunity to bail Chelsea out at the cost of £1. But he also we can't not say this, Graham. Ken Bates was fashioned for beards way before beards became a thing.
Yeah,
this guy had a tremendous beard. He wore his beard exceptionally well.
Yes, definitely. So he was a pioneer in that stage. Having taken them on, it is sort of a slow sort of progress before Chelsea become the juggernaut that they are. There's a whole sort of decade of sort of milling around. So, and you look at the managers. John Holland's obviously a kind of club legend, but Bobby Campbell, Ian Porterfield. None of these are kind of this. It doesn't really, the journey towards sort of bringing the style and the almost the ego back doesn't really begin, I don't think, until probably Hoddle comes back, or Hoddle comes.
Yeah, there was this kind of small spell, wasn't there, where, we'd come up and Kerry Dixon had blasted a ton of goals in for us. There was this little kind of nice touch in where we thought we'd sort of thought we were kind of like moving somewhere. Because we'd gone down again and come back up to the first division. And this was with Kerry Dixon, who, of course, who got the golden boot in every single division, which is worth mentioning.
Oh, that's a brilliant fact.
Yeah.
Kerry Dixon got the golden boot in every single division, and including the first division, alongside Gary Lineker. He shared it with Gary Lineker. And I think we finished 6th twice after coming up. But yeah, then suddenly, we have 2 stinkers of a season, and we've sort of back down again. But you're right. The biggest turnaround does appear to be Ken Bates managing it. But the thing is, what Ken Bates was doing other things as well. So Ken Bates had, other ideas on the hotel. He'd obviously managed to secure, finally, 10 years of wrangling, he'd managed to secure the ground, because he bought the club. He didn't know the ground, right? So we didn't own.
Yeah.
So it took him 10 years to get that sorted out. There's a lot of things to do in that period of time because of how bad the situation was. Yeah, I think it's 94. Is it 93 that Klein Hoddle comes in? So and he's come. I think it's a bit of a gamble, because I think all we had to see from Glenn Hoddle was Swindon. We don't know anything else apart from Swindon, but he had done well at Swindon. He'd done remarkably well at Swindon. And so, yeah, but we're all sort of delighted that we've got someone of a certain stature.
I mean, I've said that Chelsea hadn't won very much, but of course, I am glossing over the full Members' Cup victory in 1985-86.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, Graham, I'm not having anyone knock the full Members' Cup. If the greatest manager of English football history, which I think we'll all agree is probably Brian Clough, right, is going to take that seriously enough to win it twice and share the spoils of the full members' top 2 teams with Chelsea, then I don't think we can possibly knock the full Members' Cup.
Very much so. Although, it's fascinating. Chelsea won the first edition is fantastic. I mean, every edition of the full Members' Cup is fantastic. The first edition is extraordinary, not least because there's a southern and a northern section, and Chelsea beat Oxford United in the Southern League semi-final, sadly, over 2 legs. What probably tells its own story is that in that season, 5 top-tier clubs enter that. Chelsea, Coventry, Man City, West Brom and Oxford. So you can probably draw your own conclusions as to how seriously it was taken.
Who was it that introduced... Whose idea was it? Was it...
It was... I think it came out of...
Ken Bates?
Yeah, it could have been.
Hey, seriously, was it Ken Bates? Listen, because we were banned from Europe, right? So it was born out of being banned from Europe. And I think it might have been Ken Bates. Nobody liked Ken Bates, right? So already, nobody likes Ken Bates. So and I think the top 5 or 6 teams, whoever those top, there's always a big 4 or big 6, isn't there, in any decade. So whoever that was at the time just went, no, we're not doing that. And so there's a lot of teams missing from it.
That's exactly that, Lyndon. The whole idea was to supplement the loss of European football. And it runs from 85-86, which is the first season that English teams are banned, right through to the early 1990s, where English teams are back in. And I think they let it run for a couple of seasons because they maybe weren't sure that English teams were going to stay in Europe. So they kind of wanted to cover their bases just in case there was a tradition to keep this tournament running.
That first final, which is at Wembley, Chelsea beat Man City, 67,000 that game at Wembley, which is pretty extraordinary. Shows the appetite for it. Chelsea, by the way, are 5-1 up in that game going into the 85th minute and still only win it 5-4, which kind of tells its own story of that Chelsea side.
So, we backed the trophy.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we like a bit of excitement. I didn't go to that, but I'd heard from some of my mates that went that, it was more like about 75, 80,000. I mean, just people were just cramming in. There was like people, but have you checked whether Ken Bates did or didn't?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the origins. I know it was sponsored by Zenit Data Systems, and Simod got involved in terms of like carrying the name of the competition, but I'm not sure.
It does ring a bell. It does ring a bell to me.
It does feel like the type of thing Ken Bates would think.
And if it wasn't him, it would have been Jimmy Hill.
That's yeah.
Oh, the genius that is Jimmy Hill.
Oh, there we go. Oh, here we go. Created by the Football League Management Committee, who chaired by Ken Bates.
Yes.
On it. This is fantastic work.
Brian Clough won it twice, so let's not knock it. So.
Yeah.
Genius. But going back to Hoddle, because Hoddle was still playing, wasn't he? So I think he was still player manager. And I think it was a 94 FA Cup final, Chelsea Man United. I think Hoddle strips off and comes off the bench to try to salvage something in that game. And this really kicks off a kind of a string of player managers for Chelsea, right through to the year we're going to get to, because Hoddle departs to go to England and was replaced by the brilliant Ruud Gullit, who was also still in the kind of the final moments of his playing career and came on board as a player manager. And then once we get through the Gullit piece, and it's probably worth talking about the Gullit piece, not bypassing it quickly, we get into Gianluca Vialli, who also was a player manager. So there was a period where Chelsea were allowing their playing staff to manage everyone on the pitch.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't remember any other club doing it. I mean, it's just...
Kenny Dalglish.
Kenny Dalglish is the one, but then Dalglish had at Liverpool had a very obvious kind of support staff there. I mean, Dalglish was he was more than this, but Dalglish is almost the front man, wasn't he? And you kind of got the feeling that all the work was being done behind it. Whereas with Chelsea, I don't really remember. I mean, maybe Steve Clark was assistant in those days. Was that later?
He did later, he became assistant manager later, but you're right. I mean, it was like literally bringing in a player manager, and then and players that hadn't, they weren't part of the system, but I suppose they were part of the now. Ruud Gullit was definitely part of the team. So Glenn joins as player manager, if you like, and Ruud's already playing, and then sort of takes. It must be very difficult for players who are playing to their interest. So I think possibly, I would say maybe it was a bit easier for Hoddle, in that respect, to sort of join in that capacity, because so he's joining in that capacity, so everyone knows from day one he's player manager. He's not going to play much, but he's player manager. Whereas when a player transitions from I'm with you guys as a player, and now your role changes, but that's got to be a much harder thing to deal with. So possibly a bit easier for Glenn. But I mean, it's one of those things that apparently when Glenn joined, people talk about one of the first things he did was like phoning up, players like Ruud Gullit, and that's really, it is the kickstart. Glenn is the kickstart, because he's the one that contacts Ruud Gullit. He's the one that says, listen, you've got to bear in mind that, by the way, Cobham didn't exist then, right? So our facilities, if you talk to, or if you see Glenn Hoddle talking about what it was like when he first arrived at Chelsea, the facilities were absolutely awful. So they tried to keep, when he brought Ruud Gullit over, they tried to hide all of that from him. And then you've got to say, well, Ruud Gullit was up for a challenge, right? So he's just up for a challenge. He didn't want to join a club apparently that was already at the top of their game. So he was up for a challenge, which is great. Perhaps the FA Cup final was, it's helpful, even though it's a bad loss. It still shows that that there's a club going in a certain direction. The Premier League has now in full flight, and there's much more money about, right? So things are changing on that score now with Sky and the Premier League, and so things are kind of developing that way. And I suppose there's a little bit of Matthew Harding in the mix, and of course the Ken Bates and Matthew Harding relationship, which we kind of liked Matthew Harding, but I still side on what Ken Bates' argument always was. He's got no manifesto, doesn't want anything. There's no point coming to me and saying, just go and buy Letitia for 10 million, I'll give you the money. When I've got a much bigger plan, I've got a structure, I've got things that I need to be doing in the stand and the hotel and, and everything else, which of course in the long run was correct. Yeah, there was lots of things behind the scenes that perhaps were helpful, that there was a little bit of money, a little bit of support, and that perhaps Chelsea had some ambitions. I mean, Hoddle was one thing, but Gullit is another level. You cannot believe that the team that you've supported for so long, and not experiencing the glamour years, as you guys point out, where we won cups and, beating Real Madrid in Europe and winning the Super Cup. When you've not experienced that, you've only experienced the bad times or the low times. Suddenly you've got Ruud Gullit, world player. I mean, the world's best player at one point.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure anyone in
believed it
in English. Yeah, no, but in English football at that stage, I could be misremembering. Gullit is a real step change. I think, Jamie, is that what you were about to say or something?
Oh yeah, it's an incredible signing. But I think there's so many other things going on. The cauldron of ingredients is really bubbling. I mean, Lyndon's already mentioned that the Premier League is on the rise. The Premier League with Sky's money is absolutely changing the shape of English football as we've known it, and it's going in one direction, and that's up. You've also got in the early 1990s the Bosman ruling, which absolutely opens the door to buying players from anywhere around the world because of different workers' rights in terms of how you can sign players. And then on top of that, you've got Blair's boom in Britain, you've got Britpop, you've got London Calling. I mean, there is just so much. You've got the Spice Girls. I mean, what a time to be alive. It's just fantastic. Why wouldn't Ruud Gullit want to come to London at this particular moment?
It's a big, it's funny you said, because timed with Chelsea kind of like having Ruud Gullit, and then of course the players that come over, the Italians, of course, that come over, Gianfranco Zola, I think was he the first, or maybe Di Matteo was already there, and then of course suddenly that whole Kings Road glamour that was only talked about kind of like retrospectively about sort of the 60s, 70s glamour, which, let's face it, stopped in 73. There was no more glamour at Chelsea after 73, but was kind of, and it is in step, I suppose, isn't it? With kind of like, there is a sort of a change in Britain and a kind of a bit more of a boom, and the Premier League, which is really kicking off now. So by 96 and 7, and now a lot of those players there. By the way, I really want to make sure that I bring in one of the most important signings Chelsea made through that period, because we're talking about all of these foreign stars. Vialli and Zola were foreign stars, no doubt about it. Zola's time at Napoli with Maradona, for crying out loud, it's unreal. And Vialli, of course, was at Juventus, and Ruud Gullit, Di Matteo, of course, who played with Gaza in Italy. I think one of our most important signings was Mark Hughes.
Yeah. Right. You've got my full undivided attention.
The amount of special goals he scored to get us back into games. So 97 is our first trophy, as you remember, for 26 years. Our first major domestic trophy, if you want to discount the full members, like I know you're gonna, is 97 in FA Cup, and we are losing 2-0 to Liverpool in the quarterfinals, and it is Mark Hughes that starts that comeback, and it's Mark Hughes that started the comeback in so many important games, in semi-finals that we got through where we were losing in Europe, and it's Mark Hughes that got the first goal back. If you check, I don't have every game listed, but you can check each game that he scored the first goal back, or the equaliser, or the winner. Normally the first goal back came from Mark Hughes, and suddenly we're in the game. and he turns it, and he'll probably set up the second one, the equaliser or the winner. It's certainly the game against Liverpool. And I think he came on in that game. I think it's half-time. I think there's half-time substitutions that are made at 2-0 up. Of course, we go on to win, I think, 4-2.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a really interesting point about Hughes. And he's a really interesting one. I mean, Jamie, you'll have more of perspective as to why Ferguson got rid of him. But he goes on to have a kind of Indian summer of a career. I mean, he's 32, I think, when he joins, if I've done my maths right, when he joins Chelsea. And as you say, Lyndon, great scoring record there, carries on playing in the Premiership, I think, over that period, does all right at Southampton and Blackburn. He just keeps going, doesn't he?
He signed on the same day as Ruud Gullit, right?
Wow.
He signed on the same day as Ruud Gullit. And he scores the only goal in a 1-0 win over Arsenal, which was our last league win against Arsenal until 2005. Right? We had a terrible record until Mourinho turned up. But Hughes joins us same day that Ruud Gullit signed for £1.5 million. When we sold him on, I think it was to Southampton, wasn't it? And we sold him for about 600k then.
Yeah.
After everything he'd achieved with us, it's got to be one of our best ever signings. Financially, success, brought on the pitch too. And he game changed so many times.
I think my favourite kind of mark, which I think was when he was at Chelsea. I'm sure I heard this story from there, but it's something about Mark Hughes going, kind of goes to the physio, gets an X-ray done, and the guy's, it's nothing too serious. It's just a bit of residual damage from when you broke your ankle. And Mark Hughes goes, I've never broken my ankle. He obviously played through it.
Yeah, he got badly studied down the back of the leg, like the Achilles, after the and it was kind of they speaking to him after the game with Leeds, the Leeds game, Chelsea Leeds game, and he was already playing for Chelsea then. It was a Chelsea Leeds game, which is usually a bit feisty. And the interviewer says, "Let's just have a look at the back of your leg there." And he's got obviously the socks already down the back of the ankle. You see this massive, great sort of studs. Then he goes, he said, "Well, I play my game like that, so I can't complain." The sort of player that I you dislike immensely if he doesn't play for you, but you love him playing for you.
Yeah.
There's few players like that. Like Roy Keane would have been one of those that you I'd really disliked Mark Hughes as a player until he joined Chelsea, and I loved him to bits. And there's a few like Roy Keane would have been one. Dennis Wise would have been one, of course.
Yeah,
he would have been a player that you would have actually despised unless he played for you. You'd have loved him.
Yeah, and it's possible that if you played with Dennis Wise, you might think that as well. He seems to be a bit of a wind-up merchant.
Everyone seems to speak highly of him. I mean, and all of those foreign players have all said how important Dennis Wise was.
Yeah.
In terms of the gel of that, because as you rightly say, were we the first team to field 11 foreign players at any one time?
Yeah, December the 26th, 1999. It was Gianluca Vialli's team. And it was the first time that in the English Football League that non-British players had taken to the field. Now, it's not the first time that it wasn't fully English. There was a time in 1955, believe it or not, a guy called William Galbraith, a Scotsman who was managing in England at Accrington Stanley. He fielded 11 Scots. So he officially is the first football manager in the English Football League to field a team with no English players in it. But in the Premier League era, it was Chelsea in 1999. Coincidentally, also the same season, the last time a team was fielded in the English top flight full of Englishmen, Aston Villa's John Gregory, 11 outfield players, all English, and 3 substitutes, all English. That was in 1999. That was the last time it happened.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Good stats. Good stats.
Fantastic.
I know. I also remember there was a period where I think West Ham had a bit of a foreign legion. And I think they were the first team to have a full squad, i.e. including the subs bench.
Yes, because in that first Chelsea side, because then Dennis Wise is injured. I think maybe it was Lasso, and Chris Sutton, who we'll come on to, and his Chelsea spell, I'm sure. So they're injured, but it gets broken when the first substitution is made. And I love that the two substitutes are they're John Harley and Jody Morris. These kind of things. The guy they didn't bring on, still to make his debut, makes his debut 2 weeks. So John Terry.
Wow! Right. Wow. Okay. So this is all in that game of the first 11 foreigners fielded. Wow. Okay. So a lot of info there. I didn't know.
It is interesting because that was a kind of big story at the time. People made a lot of it. And it's quite interesting. Where reading a few kind of players commenting about it in bits and pieces. That for them it was kind of it wasn't a thing, and it didn't really sort of occur to them. I'm sure Vialli would have been kind of semi-aware of it. But if you're Torre Andre Flo, you're playing almost everywhere, so it's kind of relatively normal, isn't it?
I guess it is. Yeah, it's John. So John Harley had. So John Harley was a little bit of a fan favourite for a while. I think he took a move to Leeds actually from us. But he played a cracking game for us against Leeds, and so I think at the time Vialli was now not going to play. So the time that I'm thinking about is when John Harley was playing, and Vialli had sort of had said, I'm not. And so we're all shouting, John Harley. He didn't know until the next day that we were shouting his name because he thought we were shouting Vialli, rather than John Harley. So, but yeah, he was. There's a few. Jody Morris was a lovely little player as well. I mean, he had a lot of talent, and of course, I think coming into that team though, I think the impressive thing about anyone that can come into that team was because after we'd won that '97 Cup final with Di Matteo's 42-second goal, which is a screamer, of course.
Yeah,
and then we go on, and I think you guys can sort of value that is, but we then win the sort of the League Cup, we win the Cup Winners' Cup. We're now sort of winning trophies, and I think 98, 99, we're close to winning the league, really. With a few games to go. We blow it, but I think we still only finish a few points off the top, and by then that you can attract players without having to chuck a lot of money around because you've now got a very attractive playing football team. You've got big names there, so the youngsters coming through are kind of seeing cups being won and success on the pitch and a style of play which is, as you guys mentioned, is really. We became, I think, at that point, the sort of the neutral football fans' favourite. We watch if you fancy watching a game where it's not your team. If Chelsea were playing, you'd watch it. So which is nice. I mean, I'll still pick the Premier League.
Yeah,
it's over it. But yeah, it's lovely. But again, you have to. We're in dreamland anyway, so we had no. I mean, if we'd have won the league, it just would have been ridiculous. I mean, we're already in dream. We cannot believe that these players are wearing blue shirts. Yeah. So we're going along to games just in awe of what we just can't believe that these players are wearing a blue shirt. I mean, I don't think you might want to cut this, but I mean, I remember when Zola scored for Italy against England at Wembley, and I'm the only person in the pub cheering. I literally cheered it. I couldn't care less. There was no Chelsea players for England, so in the England team. But yeah, it was just a sort of this weird we're in dreamland time, and but for those players coming through, like you've mentioned, John Terry and Jody Morris, and and John Harley, the academy wasn't what it became at that point. But for anyone in that company, that's got to be kickstarting everything that is then going to follow. I mean, we then, of course, move on, to sort of Claudio Ranieri, at that point. But yeah, I don't know how. I don't honestly know there's lots of rumours, by the way, but and also when you listen to what Ruud Gullit says and then what Vialli says, they seem to have a different way of looking at things. Or Vialli's not here anymore, unfortunately, but they seem to have a slightly different version of events. So Ruud Gullit thinks that he was definitely stabbed in the back, but it definitely works out. So Ruud Gullit has won the first trophy, and then
it all sets up for Vialli. So Chelsea have gone in this dreamland. They have gone from John Bumstead to Ruud Gullit in the midfield. We will, in the second half, talk about the arrival of Gianluca Vialli.
Hi, Graham here. We're just about wrapping up our plans for this current season, but we're already turning our attentions to our next season. If you've been listening, there are some teams you would like us to cover, or would even like to come on and talk about those teams, you can contact us, drop us a line. How do they get hold of us, Jamie?
Well, they can get hold of us by using the social media accounts, X or Blue Sky, where we have the same handles. We've got yourself at Said and Dunn, and myself, Couch Pundito. So Couch Pundito at Blue Sky, and Said and Dunn at Blue Sky, or on the X, aka Twitter equivalent.
And you can also get hold of us on Insta, which I think the kids call it these days. What's our handle on that one?
Yes, we're on Instagram, where we're trying to share some of our little videos. So please give us a like, a follow, and keep in touch with our little videos. So we are on Instagram as the Greatest Team Football Podcast, or by far the Greatest Team Football Podcast. Search for either of those and you'll find us. Please follow.
Okay, so welcome back. We are talking about the fantastic, stylish, super sexy Chelsea of first Ruud Gullit, first Clint Hoddle's era, then Ruud Gullit, and then ultimately Gianluca Vialli. Before the break, we were talking about the quite famous time that Chelsea became the first English club to start with no British players in them at all. I was quite curious, and I haven't. This is kind of research I've done on the fly, so I can't kind of vouch for it. But I sort of think there was almost a kind of, it was viewed as, how dare Chelsea do this? How dare they not play an English side?
Yeah.
There was definitely that kind of narrative to it. But on the other hand, it kind of shows a team and an approach which is head and shoulders above or different, ahead of the curve, really. So I was curious as to, would this happen in Italy or Spain? And I've done a small bit of research. So Real Madrid fielded a side with no Spanish players for the first time in its history against Villarreal January 2023. So only 2 years ago. And AC Milan did the same in March 2023. So you can sort of see the rest of the football world kind of playing catch up with what Chelsea were doing.
Well, we've always been innovators. We've always set the benchmark for the rest of the world. Chelsea's always done that. You can see that. It's funny you say that about that, because that particular Real Madrid team, I think, probably won everything, right? They probably won the Champions League and the league title of that year. So you can't argue with it, right? I mean, that would have been a very difficult argument for, the Spanish to have, because, I'm guessing that they won the Champions League and League in that year. Did they?
Yeah, I mean they've got it's Courtois, Mendy, Alaba, Rudiger, Militao, Cruz, Tony Cruz. I shouldn't have read them because I actually probably know their names. Not that's how I read them. Modric, Benzema. Yeah, there's a whole chunk in there. So and of course, Carlo Ancelotti was manager at the time, so he obviously picked that up from Chelsea as well.
Of course he did. Yeah. I mean, I mean, it didn't. It got us some success, of course, and we were close that season, and it was. I mean, we were winning the league for for a while until I think March or something. So we're top of the league. But if you look at the best team that Chelsea have ever had, which is of course under the Mourinho era and following that, there was a core. Obviously, Ashley Cole joined us, sort of thing, but which was a great purchase. So and of course John Terry and Frank Lampard, in the team, and of course Joe Cole was in the team. Yeah. We already had what I would call sort of like almost British player, like Ivica Johnson. I think is almost British, not by birthright or anything like that, but he's just so English.
He's not quite as English as Jan Molby by accent.
not quite, but he was getting there. He was getting there. Yeah, so I met Jan Molby once actually playing pool in the Southend pub.
Oh, fantastic! So,
because he was the manager of Southend United, and
yes.
I'm guessing Southend United were not paying him much money because he was running a book on the pool table and taking bets. It was such a weird thing. None of us cared. We really. There was a backlash. You're right, Graham, and there was a backlash. None of us cared. We just wanted to see the football that we were watching. We always felt that it was just sort of a jealousy backlash anyway. Wouldn't you want these players playing?
But the nature of the Premier League at that particular moment, which it was becoming, every single team in the Premier League was fielding players from all over the world. It just so happened on this one occasion, Chelsea decided to field players from all over the world in all 11 positions, but every single team was doing it. And it was a sign of the Premier League. And I do remember there were some arguments, probably later down the line, actually, in the 2000s, that it would have a negative impact on the English national team. Now, we know with hindsight, that's probably not been the case as well. Some may argue that, England haven't been glorious over the last 10 years, but they've definitely been more glorious in terms of when they've gone in tournaments than ever before. So I think the richness of these quality players that have come into the Premier League have enhanced the quality of the English players. And I would argue, and I think it's the product. The Premier League is a global product. You can't close the world off to a global product.
Yeah,
England's record in the 1970s and 1980s would seem to back you up as well on that, I think.
Yeah, when it was probably 99% of all players would have come from the British Isles. I think now in the Premier League, it's around just under 40% of the players that make up players from the British Isles. But it's still a richer game for it, and the Premier League is completely different to the national team anyway. They're two different things.
So, Lyndon, as you mentioned earlier, Chelsea have started to get into this habit where they bring in a player manager who quite early on signs a player who is then going to replace them as player manager. So it's Gullit who brings Vialli in, and there is this kind of they have sort of a strange relationship even when Vialli's playing just as a player, I guess, because he kind of gets. I mean, Vialli has a fantastic scoring record for Chelsea. But sort of, he does seem to fall out, as, not the first person to fall out with Ruud Gullit.
I mean, it's, you're a striker and you think that, every time you go on the pitch, you're going to score. And I think, every top striker has kind of said that. So I wonder if it's harder to accept as a striker not playing, So I do wonder whether they struggle more with not playing over sort of other players, whether their ego is bigger or, which it might have to be in a way. I mean, don't forget that Zola has also dropped in the final and of course he comes on and scores that absolute screamer and wins us the cup. So Zola himself was then dropped by Vialli. So I don't know if I should double check this or something, but I'm pretty sure that Zola scored coming on in the cup final. And so it's another striker that he's kind of and when you watch the goal, he absolutely smashes it with so much venom, and you just think, wow, where's the grace of the sort of the Zola goal? It's a belter.
Yeah.
It's like a 90 mile an hour absolute belter, and it's almost shot with the anger of being left on the bench for one of the most important games, of our time. So I think Hughes took it with a slightly better grace because you've got Zola and Vialli there, but then Hughes would always come on and make such a big difference, or when he played, he'd make such a big difference. I mean, it's the semi-final I'm thinking of against Vicenza, and we needed to come back with losing, and it's up to him, and he flicks it on for himself on the head and spins around and turns and volleys his own header. It's just a cracking goal. I mean, he turned around so many games for us. But yeah, very difficult because Vialli would play himself ahead of perhaps Zola. Let's not forget, of course, that at some point in this period we signed Torre Andrew Flo. So there's some options there, right? And Flo's record, by the way, was fun. Never got really, I think, the same level of recognition. I mean, because of course, he hadn't achieved what some of these players had achieved at previous clubs. Mark Hughes, one of Manchester United, and Vialli at Juventus. So Torre Andrew Flo didn't have that history, that background, but his scoring record was. I mean, he was incredibly awful in the air, considering his height. But incredibly good with his feet, considering so he was a kind of a sort of a strange player to sort of figure out. But we all love Flo as well. So there was this difficulty of who you play. So sometimes it'd be Flo and Zola.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'd be Vialli would play himself, and so. But more often than not, it was difficult to argue the choices made because more often than not we'd win. In those days, so it's very hard to do. But then, Vialli's got to sort of choose what games to sort of sit out on.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Torre Andrew Flo gets double figures in pretty much every season. Plus 4 seasons there, or 3 full seasons. Double figures every year. 50 goals in 163 games. So a goal once every 3 or so. And Chris Sutton, who cost considerably more, gets, I think, 3 goals in 39 games to Chelsea. So there you go. Flo is obviously the better of the two.
Yeah, and probably with Flo as well, you've got to consider substitutions because there's a lot of Solskjaer in that, where if you just look at the amount of games Solskjaer played, if you get games he appeared in, it's very different to the amount of minutes he was playing. Yeah. So I'm sure Solskjaer's record, if you look at sort of per games played, is different to minutes played. On the basis of that he would have come off or come on, and Flo had that too. And of course, I think most strikers will say that they would benefit from a run of games in a row, and Flo probably didn't get that run of games in a row either because there was always kind of 3 strikes. It's different now, isn't it? But a lot of very successful clubs would have a really good striker on the bench or two top strikers playing. Manchester United successfully had two top strikers playing for a long time, and Liverpool would have two strikers scoring regularly all the time. Although you could say that Owen and Heskey, only one of them scored. The other one was a feeder.
So Chelsea break, apart from their glorious full Members' Cup success, which we agree we don't want to gloss over, but Chelsea win the FA Cup and Ruud Gullit with Vialli not making a huge impression. I think he gets dropped for the final for that one, doesn't he? But that breaks the dam a little bit on this. And the following season, is a really strange one, isn't it? Because Chelsea win 2 more cups in that season, but at the same period, Gullit gets the sack and Vialli takes over.
Yeah, so I guess it was Vialli that won those cups.
Vialli is the only thing in the logic and the favour of it is that Ken Bates appears to be just appointing Chelsea's most famous, biggest name player as the next manager. That seems to be the pattern because it's not obvious. There's no heritage of Italian managers in English football at this stage.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Yeah, there isn't. And I think Ruud Gullit was probably the first Dutch manager in English football.
Yes,
certainly in the top flight or something. So I think Ruud Gullit was the first. Yeah. So and I think he's on record as saying that he didn't want to be manager. It was kind of thrust upon him. And so, however it worked out with Vialli, I suspect it wasn't Vialli's idea that he wanted to take over as manager. I suspect that it was kind of probably thrust upon him. By then, there's a lot more going on, at Chelsea than just Ken Bates. So by then, Chelsea's moved on, and there's a board there, and so how much Ken Bates was specifically kind of handling things like that then is probably a lot less so, probably a lot less hands on then by then. So Vialli gets the trophies, but it's then at that point, I think from winning those 2 trophies to, I think we do grab another trophy the following season. We come close in a few, but I think it's then the Super Cup, which is classified as a trophy that you win the following season. So we didn't. So that 98-99, where we finished 3rd in the league, almost win the league. We don't win the FA Cup. We don't win the League Cup. We don't win a European Cup, but we do win. Was it the Super Cup? Maybe.
Yeah, Super Cup
that season. So it's like we did still bag something, but it looks like a sort of a very nearly season for every year. I think we probably made 2 semi-finals, but didn't even make a final that season. But the finishing 3rd gives us the Champions League.
Yeah, and it's an incredible challenge to the title as well, because it really is the era of Manchester United and Arsenal. This is Ferguson and Wenger prime, really, in terms of Arsenal have taken a championship from Manchester United, and then the following season it's all set up for the 2 to go head to head. And then Chelsea are just in the shadows the whole time. And you already mentioned it, Lyndon. I think they do spend some time at the top of the division, even later in the season as well. And they finish with 2 games to go. They can still win the championship. It's only really decided after the 30, I think it was 38 games played that season. It's only really decided after 36 games that Chelsea can't win it. But they do finish 4 points off Manchester United, who win the championship, and they only lose 3 games in that league season as well, which is the very first season, along with Manchester United that season, that a team in the Premier League loses the least amount of games. Before that, the least amount of games lost in a full season by any team was 4. And then you've got these two teams in the same season, Chelsea and Manchester United, only losing 3 games. And it's something that doesn't actually happen that often in the Premier League. It's an incredible league challenge. And I think it probably gets a little bit forgotten about because of the Arsenal-Manchester United dominance of that period. Well,
it also gets forgotten about because, finishing 4 points, off the top, you think is amazing. You think, well, there's that's something to look back on, right? And it's a very neat. But what did Man United do? You don't just win the league, you idiots. You won the treble. You won the Champions League. So you win the European Cup, and the FA Cup and the league, right? So it's like you've won the treble. So no one's going to I mean, nobody even thinks about Arsenal coming close to winning the league. I mean, they finished above us, right? So they're closer than 4 points. But no one's going to think about no. That whole season is only going to be talked about for Manchester United, winning the treble. But by now, we are starting to think, wow, okay, so we can, we can get to semi-finals and finals of things every year, and we can sort of push for the league title. But it would be unrealistic because it's such a short space of time. You guys are have said it from really 97 is the first cut, right? So it's such a short space of time. We talk about 2 seasons, or 3 seasons if you include it. So 97, 98, 99. It's such a short space of time to think that you can suddenly sort of challenge forward against the 2 teams that were absolutely dominating. They were great, and they carried on being great teams as well, dominating for the next few seasons as well, and what Arsenal did then, going unbeaten, which is a highly overrated achievement.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Chelsea women's team have just done it. No one's banging on about that.
Yeah. The Arsenal women's team did it in 2006-07 as well. You don't hear much about that.
No other teams then, but I mean now it's better. Better league.
But what it also does that season when Chelsea do finish in 3rd position, 4 points off, winning the whole thing. It's the first season that the team finishing 3rd in the Premier League qualify for the Champions League. So Chelsea are in the Champions League, the European Cup, for only the 2nd time in their history, and they look like they belong there.
Obviously, there's the famous games against Barcelona.
Quarterfinal,
which is incredible, and that's the quarterfinals. And even just getting to the quarterfinals again, even though there was that season, as you say, where we're top of the league for a bit, the prior season, we didn't really think that we were going to win the league. We knew that Arsenal and Man United were the powerhouses of the time, and it was the same thing really with the Champions League. So so we don't really think that we're going to go all the way. We don't really think we're going to get possibly to the quarterfinals. You're just sort of hoping that you can go a bit further, right? So when you get to the quarterfinals, you're playing Barcelona, and now you're thinking, okay, this is where we come undone because it's Barcelona. But in great Chelsea fashion, they give us a dream again. They make us think, could we? No, surely not. Could we? And of course, we beat Barcelona, and we start to think this isn't real, isn't it? Of course, it isn't real, but in the end, but yeah, it's this whole thing that at each level, where suddenly you win the FA Cup after 3 years after being demolished in the final by Man United. By the way, Man United only got to that cup final because of a late Mark Hughes equaliser. Against Oldham. Otherwise, we're all sitting as Chelsea fans thinking, it's Oldham. It's Oldham. We fancy our chances against Oldham.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. When you were talking earlier about Mark Hughes scoring incredibly important goals, I was at that game. I was behind that very goal, and I'd almost given up hope. It really was in the dying seconds, and it was an extraordinary goal. The ball has been looped back in the box. It's classic kind of just get it in the box, and Hughes just lets it come over his shoulder, and he's almost horizontal when he's stretching, and the power and accuracy he gets, and it fires in. It's incredible, and that's for a draw. To take it to a replay. So yeah, you're right. I mean, the first thing that came into my mind when you talked about Mark Hughes' incredible important goals, that was the goal that came into my mind. I remember leaving Wembley that day thinking we got away with that one, because if we get to the final, we're bound to win it because it's only Chelsea.
Yeah, and it was true, and we're thinking the same thing. We're thinking, oh my God, it could be Oldham. We fancy our chances. So, and as you say, it's an incredible. Got to be one of the greatest volleys of the ball of all time. Mark Hughes has to be one of the all-time great volleys of the ball. Volleys,
yeah.
That a Graham word. We haven't mentioned it, but that did allow us, even making the final, allowed us to play in the Cup Winners' Cup, right, by default.
Yeah,
because Man United were already in the European Cup. So I think we made the semi-final of the European Cup Winners' Cup in '95, and obviously a lot of people don't remember that that's happened. So you've sort of edged. So there is an edge towards it, and then '97 winning it, '98, '99 as we've mentioned, and so there was always an edge, but we never felt like we deserved to sort of suddenly overtake, Big Ten. But it was very nice because there was it was a very gradual edging towards being, one of the best teams. And so that European Cup run that ends, unfortunately, at the Nou Camp. Here's an interesting one for you. I don't know if this is valid anymore because I can't remember if we've recently played Barcelona at all, but I don't believe Barcelona had ever beaten Chelsea with 10 men on the field, with 11 men on the field.
Oh, that's niche. That's niche.
Wow.
Have Barcelona ever beaten Chelsea when Chelsea have had 11 men on the field? I think it's a no.
I assume you mean at the end.
Yeah, they've never beaten us with 11 men on the field.
I like that.
Wow.
So, and that the second leg, when obviously we'd won the first leg, the second leg, of course, they win it and we go down to 10 men.
The only moment that comes into my head when I think of Chelsea versus Barcelona is Michael Ballack. That's the only thing I can think of. That's completely ingrained into my psyche, where I think he wants to rip the face off the referee.
Michael Ballack does to that ref what Martin Keown did to Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, he did. That is true. This is the ugly side of the game.
It was, but it was an incredible amount of penalty shouts completely ignored. I mean, that's of course a different game. That's of course a different, era. But yeah, there was an incredible amount of penalty shouts that were just that were waved away. And I think that, one of them's a bit woolly. Two of them, I think, are penalties. But even the most, staunch kind of like don't want to give a soft penalty or don't like Chelsea will say one of them's absolutely stonewall.
Yeah.
Most people will say, yeah, there should be two there. But one of them is ridiculous. That's a different sort of different era. But so it's a bit unfortunate the way that went. But again, so loads of kind of hope, thinking, can we hold on to this lead? But not that much expectation, and again, not too much disappointment because we're proud to have gone to the quarterfinals of what is the biggest trophy in the world apart from the World Cup. But I mean, club level, it's the greatest trophy on the planet, isn't it?
So but Chelsea being 3-up after almost they're 3-up in the first half in that first game, and it's almost that as Figo gets that sort of semi-consolation goal, and again only 5-7 minutes away from nicking it. But as you say, it's all progress, isn't it? It's Chelsea's first year in that tournament. They they reached the quarter-final. All the while this is happening, Chelsea are getting to the final of the FA Cup in the same season, aren't they?
Is this the last one at Wembley as well?
Yes,
it is. Yeah,
so
it's Aston Villa.
So of course it's a big deal being made of it because it's the last one at the old Wembley, if you want to call it that, and it's another trophy that we think we're. I don't know if we got a little bit lucky with some of our FA Cups, right? Because I think. Playing Middlesbrough in our 97 win, you could say, well, at least it wasn't Man United or Arsenal sort of thing, which would have posed a problem. So it felt fortunate that we're playing Middlesbrough. Perhaps no, I don't want to disrespect that they won.
It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't just the whole run in 2000. You could apply was quite fortunate. Other than Newcastle in the semi-final, there's no massive team. They get rid of Gillingham in the quarterfinals, Leicester in the 5th round, Forest in the 4th round, and Hull City in the 3rd round. It's quite. I mean, if you could cherry pick your way to Wembley, you're going to be picking something like that, aren't you?
I suppose. I remember being worried about Newcastle. I can't remember the Newcastle team that year.
Dalglish was the manager then, and he was almost picking apart Keegan's brilliant side. So Newcastle was changing, and they were definitely on a downward trend at that point. But I mean, they were still a draw. I will point out that in 2000, Manchester United weren't in the FA Cup, so it was impossible to draw them. They'd withdrawn under pressure from the FA to go and play in Brazil in a FIFA World Club tournament that will never happen again, ever.
Talk about backlashes. I mean, there was an enormous kind of football fan backlash to that. I mean, you already had every fan on every terrace shouting "Stand up if you hate Man U."
Yeah.
For years by then, the last thing you needed, not that you were in it for a popularity contest, you didn't really care, but I mean, just to sort of compound how much every other fan disliked Man United, you forfeit the FA Cup to go and play in some, trophy the other side of the world. But I'd forgotten that, Jamie. Yeah.
So you have. It won't make the edit, but it's so entertaining because this is reminding me of one of my favourite things, which was during this period, there was such a fever about Man United being because weren't Man United trying to excuse the first couple of rounds or something, wasn't it? I think that was what they were doing.
I think just for a little bit of context before you have your moment in the sun. They were put under a lot of pressure by the FA because the FA were bidding to host the 2006 World Cup. So United weren't keen to go and play in this tournament. They weren't keen to not participate in the FA Cup. And they did suggest that they'd put a youth team out in the FA Cup, which the FA said, no, you can't do that. That devalues the tournament. So they just went, okay, we won't play in it, which devalues the tournament.
So at some point during this, the Daily Mirror publishes a front cover with under the headline, "Is there anyone left in Britain who does not think Man United should be in the cup?" And they have got, I'll put this on the social, it's so good. They've got like 20 people they've taken pictures of and got them quotes from Ian Botham, Tony Blair, Barry Norman, Trevor Brooking. But the list gets more surreal. I mean, Nick Hancock, I think Darren Day is on there. Simon Weston, the Falklands hero. All these people are being asked.
Yeah, you've literally got
Sharon Davis is on there.
War heroes. But
Sharon Davis says, I think I got now.
The strangest one in there, Graham, has got to be Barry Norman.
Barry Norman.
Hey, and why not?
Excellent.
Oh, it's a thing of absolute beauty. I think both John Gregory and Gianluca Vialli miss a trick because obviously this would have been the opportunity to play an all-English side against an all-international side. But Chelsea ruined it by playing Dennis Wise, and Aston Villa ruined it by playing Benito Carboni, Boateng, and Mark Delaney from Wales. So that feels like a missed trick, surely.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So we only fielded one player that was English, and they only fielded one player that was foreign. Is that right?
They had two. They had one Dutchman, one Italian, and one Welsh.
But of course, Wise was going to come out captain triumphant once more. Again, I mean, a note to sort of obviously to him is if you're now a club that's very attractive, not just because your location, but because you're winning trophies and because and there's a bit of money in the pot, and yet no matter who you buy, he remains in the team. And that was something that I always thought about with Lampard in that era where buying was absolutely, money was no object, and managers were changing quite regularly at Chelsea. You could buy anyone you want, but Lampard would always be almost the best player in the team every season. No matter who was there, he was immovable. And it was like that for Dennis Wise. He always managed to up his game. He always managed to ability on the pitch. Obviously the players loved him, and he was sort of like the gel of all of these kind of this multinational club now. But his standards on the pitch. I know there was a season with he had slightly more red cards than other seasons, but and there was always this. A lot of people, just don't like him, but they would have loved him if he played for them. Yeah, that's my point. And his standards were raised, and I think he managed to raise his standard. And this goes back to perhaps something that you're saying, Jamie, as well, about the foreign players coming in. Yeah, well, there was this worry that, we wouldn't produce enough good England players, but look what we're doing. We're producing Jude Bellinghams and Cole Palmers, and we've never had so many foreign players in our academies, by the way. We've never had so many foreign players in our academies. That's the thing that's changed. So back then it was first team. You were buying first team players. Okay. Now we're buying, foreign players to join our academies at 14, 15, where the permits allow. Obviously we can't get them from certain countries, but so, like Martson was in our, the Chelsea academy, for example, and things like that. So surely it should get even worse, right? But as Graham said, the 70s and 80s was not a great period.
No.
The Premier League, like most top leagues in Europe, in the world, are benefiting from these incredible standards that have been pushed and pushed and pushed. Dennis Wise in that FA Cup gets the man of the match as well, just to kind of reinforce what you're saying about the fact that he rises to the occasion. And you're right, he was one of those players as an opponent fan you didn't like, but you couldn't help admire because of his incredible tenacity, his doggedness, his cheekiness. But he's in a team, and it just shows you how Chelsea start the decade with Townsend, Dixon, Clive Allen, Dave Bessett, Graham Stewart. They're finishing this decade winning the FA Cup final with Gus Poyet, Didier Deschamps, Marcel Desailly, George Weah. It's incredible. The step change is incredible in that time frame. And not only that, they're winning trophies as well. It's the transition of this football club in that period is incredible. And it really is sowing the seeds of the amazing harvests that Chelsea are going to have for the next 20 years.
Gus Poyet was a fantastic signing. I remember one of our opening games of the season, and it might have been the 99-2000. I think it's a flick ball over the top from Zola over the head of Gus Poyet, who volleys it home. Yeah. And I think it's against someone who had just come up, like Sunderland, perhaps. And the commentator just says, "Welcome to the Premier League." It's the first game of the season, and Zola and Poyet, they had a great combination as well. But for that short period, Zola and Poyet, they really clicked straight away. But yeah, those players that you've mentioned, Desailly, we hadn't even mentioned him. And Deschamps. These are World Cup winners, and these steps that were made, and you're thinking from the very first unbelievable, like world class, Ballon d'Or player, best player in the world at a period of time, Ruud Gullit, to now there's a team of these. There's an actual full team of or not a full team, but there's a number of these players in. Although I do believe George Weah didn't last too long.
No, he came at the back end of it, but what an incredible player for Chelsea to attract a footballer like George Weah at any point of his career just shows you how far this football team has come.
Yeah, you listing that, Jamie, is kind of it's great. Yeah,
or maybe there were just a couple of really decent Liberian restaurants in West London that he fancied going to.
The signings continue, so they win the FA Cup that year. The sort of top signings continue. So Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank is signed in that summer, which makes a big difference to it. And probably Chelsea's most famous signing, Winston Bogard, joins in the summer. And
ignoring the Bogard thing,
no, we're coming back to that. We're coming back to that.
So Hasselbank was supposed to join us immediately from Leeds. Leeds wouldn't sell him to us.
Mm.
So the deal was sort of done, I think. I'm pretty sure I've got this right. But Hasselbank was going to come to us, and Leeds refused to sell him to us. But the deal was done, right? So then Leeds instead, I think, sold him to Atletico Madrid, who then sell him to us.
It's brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. We finally get our man. Don't forget, there's no Mark Hughes anymore, and we know that Zola. I mean, we signed Zola when he was 29 or 30 already. 96. I think it was Christmas '96 something, and so we know that Zola is already probably 34 or something now, and so there's Vialli, of course, is not playing anymore. So there's signings need to be made, and of course the big priority is to try and get yourself a signing someone like Hasselbank, who's played Premier League football. I mean, he fits straight in, doesn't he? I mean, I think, does Gudjohnsen join the following year, perhaps, or the same? I think
Gudjohnsen joins that year, actually. So he's signed that summer as well. So
that's an unreal partnership, isn't it? I think that, wasn't there something like 55 goals shared between them in one season, or something like that? It was a incredible partnership. But you guys might be able to check this. I can't remember when Vialli goes, and
so he leaves 5 games into that season, and I think this says a lot for now. There might be other stuff at work for it, but I think this shows that the expectations there are in place at that stage. Because Chelsea win their first game, they lose to Bradford, and then it's 3 draws. It might be unspectacular, but it's not. It's not obvious that he must go immediately. And you would have thought Vialli has some credit in the bank, but evidently not.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you benefit from getting on a true stan, rather than just a fan, who would probably tell you the ins and outs and what was going on behind the scenes. Because do you know what I mean? Whether there was kind of like rumblings. Was there sort of disquiet or sort of like, anything like that going on? I doubt it, because, everyone loved Vialli, right?
Yeah.
So you have to sort of imagine that it was a shock to everyone. I believe it was a shock to everyone. I think everyone, that I've since kind of like read or heard talk about it have just said we were in disbelief. We couldn't believe it, And did we have a manager? Was he? Was it already set up, appointed, or was there a kind of a period where there's no manager? I can't remember.
So, he's replaced by another Atletico Madrid man, Claudio Ranieri, who's in the...
Was it straight away, Jamie? Sorry. Was it?
Yeah, so Ranieri joins in the September, shortly after Vialli has been released.
But there's no
big gap.
I'm reading sort of a report of the sacking, and there's no... Ranieri's not in the frame at that stage, so there's no immediate sign of it. It's just there's a great article, old article from the time, which is just a series of Chelsea players, past and present, and Italians, all saying what a terrible decision it is. Casaraghi, I think, goes, Ken Bates does not know the meaning of gratitude. He is arrogant and has made a mistake.
It is a surprise, because he's won, if you include the Super Cup, which we should, and the Charity Shield, which we should. He's won 5 trophies with Chelsea in his 2-year period. In this 2-year period that we're talking about, it's almost doubled the amount of trophies that Chelsea have won in their whole history. But it is that step change you're talking about, I think, guys. I think it is that the standards have been raised, the expectations have been raised. Chelsea aren't expected to be drawing football matches in the Premier League. They now want to be challenging for big honours. So maybe the tolerance is a lot more thinner than it's been previously.
It seems like a bit of groundwork has been done. It seems like perhaps we've been we've probably made approaches. It seems like that may have even happened over the summer, with ideas of, okay, we've got grander ideas now, and we might need a manager of more experience to take us on to that next level. The thing is, by that point, Graham, we by that point, we'd started to believe that we weren't making any wrong decisions.
Yeah.
So, ex-players or, pundits or whatever, they're saying it. But us fans, we're starting to believe that we're not making bad decisions. I mean, don't forget, Hoddle left for the England job, right?
Yeah.
Right, so that's not. But the Gullit, Gullit as manager, we're thinking that's a bit weird. That's a bit mad. But it works.
Yeah.
Gullit switches to Vialli, and we're like, what? We hadn't had a bad start to the season under Gullit either, by the way.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad. And we're going, what? That's Vialli. So, but then that works, right? So at the point of this, at the point of Vialli being replaced and Ranieri coming in, we're sort of thinking, let's not judge. We're not really getting these decisions wrong so far. So, and that proves to be another good one, right?
Yeah. It's not just one player who kind of acts as the bridge between old school Chelsea and new school and what Chelsea become. But Vialli just seems to kind of epitomise it, I think, because, both as a player and then as a manager, and because, Chelsea were playing with style, but Vialli is style, and the whole Italian thing that goes with it. So he does seem to. Vialli's sacking seems to draw a line under that era, and there's almost now a next level of sort of professionalism that I guess, or ambition that's coming in with Chelsea then.
And I think that's why at that point and also because each decision for a manager that seemed like, wow, that's bold, and then that's bold again. We're now following. As Chelsea supporters, we're just believing that decisions are going to be made correctly, and we're thinking, okay, I don't know, we didn't know who Claudio. I mean, maybe some did, but I'd never heard of, and I think the average fan hadn't heard of Claudio Ranieri. And we're all prepared. We're all prepared to sort of give. We're still in dreamland. Honestly, we are generally in that 4-year period. Are just still. We still can't believe it's happening. And if we're going to go on to, we're all looking forward to that as well. In all honesty, we're all looking forward to, having more sustained runs. And I think possibly for the first time in the fans' history since 73, we are now feeling like this is a club that isn't now going to do what we'd done previously, and it felt like we're in a place now that we're going to be forever.
So we should get round to ranking this team. It's a tough one, I think. It's a tough one. As a reminder, we've got 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats to the top, true greats, our middle category, touch greatness, and then edge greatness and blink of greats. You don't need to worry about that. But Jamie, maybe I'll come to you first, but you might have some stats, maybe.
Well, we touched on it. Just the transition of the only losing 3 games. So this Chelsea team, we're talking 98-2000, Vialli's team, they lose 3 games in 98-99. They're the first team to lose that amount of games, the minimum amount of games, along with Manchester United. So they've been done a handful of times since. They weren't champions, but it's been done previously. Liverpool in 08-09 lost 2 games and weren't champions. Chelsea, ironically, have lost only 3 games in a single Premier League season 3 times and not been champions. So, but they have got better records. They have lost just the 1 game with Mourinho, 04-05. So they got pretty good stuff. So, but the gap, the trend, I mean, the Premier League was in 98-99, the Premier League was a lot tighter. The gap between the top team and the bottom team, the average in that 10-year period between the first Premier League and 2002 was around 53 points between the team that finished top and the team that finishes bottom. Just to kind of demonstrate the difference now in the last 10 years, the gap is almost 70 points from the team that finishes top to the team that finishes bottom. So that tells me that the concentration of quality in the Premier League was a lot more tighter when Chelsea narrowly didn't win the Premier League in 98, 99. However, so we need to rank them. Some boring stuff there. I'm talking about the context of the era. So I think there's absolutely an argument to say this is a touch of greatness, because there is. Gianluca Vialli wins 5 trophies, 3 major trophies in that period, in an FA Cup, a Cup Winners' Cup, and a League Cup. It's definitely a transition. Ken Bates, who buys Chelsea in 1982 for £1, sells them to Roman Abramovich in 2003 for 80 million. That's 21 years. He's made quite a profit. I think he made a personal profit around about 18 million in that. So this incredible transition is going on with Chelsea in terms of what they are seen as an asset, but also in terms of the playing staff. So even though I think this is a touch of greatness, I'm going to start this conversation, roll it off by putting him in the 4th tier, edge of greatness. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I do believe it's on the edge of greatness. I think Abramovich comes after this period. Mourinho comes after this period. Premier Leagues come after this period. Champions League wins come after this period. So I think even though this is a glorious period in Chelsea's history, it's really the early beginnings of what's going to become. So I'm probably going to get talked out of this, but I'm going to say edge of greatness, Chelsea.
Lyndon, what do you think?
It's interesting because I think it's valid to say that, obviously the greatness comes afterwards. But if I'm sort of putting things in sort of 1, 2, 3, or 5, and then, then I don't think there's too much doubt that Chelsea become like a great team and are a great team. And it's a legendary, everyone talks about that team. Everyone talks about the Mourinho team and the team that followed, and the Ancelotti team. Equally, it's the same, that goes on to win the Champions League. And so, and that's kind of almost the top level. It's that great. Messi said the team he hated to play the most was Chelsea in that period. All of those Barcelona players. And that's supposedly, one of the greatest European teams. So if that's like, in your 1, or in between your 1 and 2, I don't know how you sort of figure out that's where Chelsea get to. Is this team that far down from that? Is it 3 levels down from that? I'm not sure that you can sort of I'm not sure you can bridge it. Like 3, I'm not sure you can go, well, there's a level 3 in there and a level 2 in there before you get there. I think, but I would say that the level 2 is possibly too close. I would say that, how do you title number 2?
Yeah, that's true great.
True greatness. Yeah, a touch of greatness, because you're winning European, cups. I don't actually agree that Charity Shield is a major trophy, but I do think that because it is a friendly after it, and it's domestic. Whereas I do think that the Super Cup is. Because you're beating the best of another European team, and that's competitive, and they're all out for that. So I do think winning the Super Cup, winning a European Cup, albeit not the big one, getting close to winning the league, but also the greatness within the team and the players that you've mentioned. There's no doubt about that, and everyone will talk about Zola forever. Unfortunately, they don't talk about defenders much, but John Terry was at the beginning of his career. Marcel Desailly, he learned everything off Desailly, off him. And so there's greatness within the team, without a doubt. We've talked about, how important Mark Hughes was. And so I think it's just too much of a gap. I just don't know how you find 2 more levels. But I would say that it's even though it's so close to that team in terms of it's only a few, it is too much to make it the next level. So I'd go with the 3rd one. I'd say there's a touch of greatness to it. There is touches of it, and so that's what I'd say. Yeah, I think the other thing is that I think a lot of teams on the edge on number 4, and I think that maybe you've then sort of there's going to be a lot of teams that don't even make number 5 in that case.
I think you're right.
Number 4.
I'm the same as you. I think if you look at that. If you look at that chart and the graph of success, so this feels like the midpoint. They do this is a team that's winning stuff. They win 5 trophies, and Chelsea previously haven't been. Now it pains me to do this because there's real style. And Vialli is really lovable, and everything's really lovable about them. And they are sort of. I'm sort of with you that almost any neutral would like them. Unless, for example, Oxford, a team who are £11 million in debt at the time and are leading 1-0 and then get a scandalous penalty given against them by a referee, Mike Reed, who's still hated at in Oxford circles. Very plainly not a penalty. And Vialli afterwards, definite pen. Now, I've always held this against him, but I'm prepared. I'm a bigger man than you might think on this, and I'm prepared to let that go. And I say, Gianluca Vialli's Chelsea, touch of greatness.
Do we get a final say from Jamie to see whether he might be reconsidering?
No, I'm happy with that. I started out in touch, but then I kind of tried to rationalize the timeline, and I think you did that way better than me, Lyndon, by arguing very successfully that the step change was too great. I absolutely concede happily that they're a touch of greatness, and I'm okay with that.
Entertainingly,
is that the first time you've had kind of 3 people agree on something?
Oh no, we've had quite a few where we agree because they're quite easy, but we've had quite a few where we don't agree. Which are more fun, to be honest. So it's always nice to have. It's very rare we have anywhere we have 3 different rankings for the same team where they span across 3 brackets. They're normally kind of win between one of 2 brackets, and it depends really how you make your closing case, your closing arguments in terms of how desperately you want to get your way on this.
I get that. I the other thing I thought, well, that team in the 60s and 70s, we were so good, which brought through so many youngsters. Our academy, of course, was tapped up terribly by Tottenham, that were the checkbook club of the time. They were known as the checkbook club. When Jimmy Greaves has scored about 47 goals for us, and they buy him. But our academy was producing so many players like Venables and stuff, and that team was close to winning things in the 60s, finally wins the FA Cup in 70, wins the European Cup, Winners' Cup, beating Real Madrid in 71. And see, that's where I would say it's edge. It's edge because it's dismantled unceremoniously badly by 72, 73. It's terribly dismantled. And it doesn't go on to have that lasting effect.
What we didn't talk about, though, in this was the snowstorm in the Arctic Circle when they went to Tromsø. There's not many. I don't know if you know about this, Graham. So when Chelsea won the Cup Winners' Cup, I think it was in the first or second round, they had to play Tromsø. Now, Tromsø, I've actually been to Tromsø's football ground. It's the most northernly professional football team in Europe. It's in the Arctic Circle, and it's got a 4G pitch now. But back in the day, it didn't. It had a grass pitch, and clearly the Norwegian season runs through the summer because the winter is just snow in the Arctic. But when Chelsea went there in October, it was an absolute snowstorm to the point where the pitch was white, and during the game, they had to stop so the groundskeeper could come on and shovel the snow from the lines because the snow was falling that heavily. And the game went. They played the whole game, though, wasn't it? It wasn't called off. I think Vialli scored a couple of goals in that game himself.
It's the classic orange ball, isn't it?
Yeah,
that we remember. I don't. So you can find that out, guys. When was the last time an orange ball was required?
The lesser spotted orange ball
in a top level at the English top level. Was it Premier League? I guess it might be. But Vialli sort of saves us. He scored 2 goals. We're being. I think we're 3-0 down, and it's like what's going. But it is playing in sort of like a foot of snow.
Yeah,
it's unreal, Graham. I thoroughly recommend watching it. It's just it's a feast for the eyes. You can't see anything. The commentators can't see anything. because it's not just a foot of snow; it's coming down. You know, and you don't know how anyone can see each other. And then Vialli just scores these 2 individual goals out of nowhere, and it's like 3-2.
That is brilliant.
I think they got hammered at the bridge.
7-1.
Was it?
Yeah, 7-1 back at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea won 9-4 in aggregate. It was quite comfortable in the end, but yeah, it's just a visual.
It is brilliant, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
You see it, Graham?
Yeah. I'm looking at some pictures of it now. It's fantastic.
Chelsea playing yellow as well,
yeah.
which just kind of adds to the whole drama of the occasion.
Yeah,
it's just fantastic.
Brilliant stuff. Excellent, Lyndon. That's been fantastic. We really appreciate you sharing some of your memories. It's been fantastic.
Cheers, guys.
Jamie, good stuff as ever.
Yeah, thanks again to Lyndon. That was great stuff. Talking about sexy football team.
And I always think you should end on a quote. The quote, of course, is, "They should think about the fans. It's outrageous. Yes, caprice." On the front cover of the Daily Mirror, talking about Man United not entering the FA Cup. Ian Botham was more reasonable. If they don't play this year, they should never play again.
How draconian is that? Wow, yeah. I mean, tell us what you think, Ian, really.
Anyway, that's for a different time. That's it. We will be back with Charlton, I think will be next up, Alan Kirbishley. We'll speak then.